What's going on, everybody? Welcome into the very first Oregon Football Report. I am going to be your host, Will Ortner. I'm so excited to get to launch a channel just like this. I loved covering the Ducks back in Portland. I'm so excited to be covering the Ducks here at Chat Sports. We'll get more into my background in a moment, but we got some big news going on with the Oregon Ducks and the college football world in general. If you were living under a rock yesterday, you might have missed what happened over on at Michigan. Plus, we got 3 injury updates for you. The first thing that we're going to talk about on today's show is the firing for cause by Michigan of their head coach, Sherrone Moore. Then we're going to dive into Dakorien Moore and whether or not he will be available to go. The star freshman wide receiver missed the last 4 games. Duck fans, myself included, really want to know if he's going to be ready to go for JMU. Then we're going to talk about Gary Bryant Jr., the speedster. Is he going to be healthy? That ankle injury, it's really been a bummer to see him on the sidelines. He was fantastic for most of this season. Lost him in that Iowa Hawkeyes game. Excited to see what his update is. And we're going to end the show with maybe the most exciting and fascinating news of this college football playoff in my eyes. Will Evan Stewart come back for the Ducks? He's missed the entire season with a knee injury, but there is a potential that the star wide receiver, the speedster, will be back for the Oregon Ducks. Maybe he puts us over the top and helps us get a national title. Before we get into any of that, though, I told you, we just launched the channel. This is the first time that the Oregon Ducks have been represented here at Chat Sports. I am West Coast Will. I'm bringing the West Coast football to Dallas, Texas. Help us out. Hit that subscribe button. It's a new channel. We literally just launched it. We have no subscribers. We want to be the first channel to get to 100 subscribers within that first day. Help us out. Let's get to that 100 subscriber number. Now, we're going to start off the show by talking about what's going on over at Michigan. Pete Thamel had this to say and basically broke the news along with Dan Wetzel and Adam Schefter that Sherrone Moore was fired by Michigan and the firing was set to be for cause. Then Michigan ended up releasing this statement, which I am going to read verbatim to you. This is coming to us from the Michigan Athletic Director, Ward Manuel. The head football coach, Sherrone Moore, has been terminated with cause effective immediately. Following a university investigation, credible evidence was found that Coach Moore engaged in an inappropriate relationship with a staff member. This conduct constitutes a clear violation of university policy, and UM maintains zero tolerance for such behavior. Biff Poggi will be appointed head coach in an interim capacity effective immediately. Now, what does this mean for Oregon? Well, Oregon in 2026 is going to have to play Michigan. Now, it is unclear about where you will play them and who will be the head coach, but understand that this is going to have a lasting impact on what the Ducks' future will look like. Will Michigan stick with Biff Poggi and have him be their head football coach? Not many people believe so. And the big rumor right now on a lot of the college football hot boards is that maybe Kalen DeBoer might be returning to the Big Ten or to at least a team that Oregon would play regularly in conference play. Now, I'm not here to speculate on who the next coach may or may not be, but as a Duck fan, it is important to note when a big traditional blue blood like Michigan can go and get a coach that might be able to keep a star like Bryce Underwood, Oregon's going to want to know who they might be going up against in the future. Now, into more important and necessary conversations, is Dakorien Moore going to be able to return against JMU? The star freshman has been absolutely fantastic for the Ducks this season. I was very impressed. You know, you hear all the news, 5-star kid coming out of Duncanville. Is he going to be a star, or is he going to go the way of a player like a Jurion Dickey, right? Someone who's supposed to come in and be absolutely fantastic, be a top performer for your team. Well, Jurion Dickey wasn't. Dakorien Moore absolutely was. He was the straw that stirred the drink for the Ducks, had a lot of big plays, and he wasn't afraid to get down and get blocking. Now, Dan Lanning, notably tight-lipped when it comes to injury status for his players, did have this to say on Dakorien Moore's potential return. I think it starts with mindset. Dakorien, like several other guys that have been in that position, realize they have a job to do as far as pushing themselves to be back in a position where they can help this team. They can still help this team even when they're not out there on the field necessarily for us. So really proud of how he's handled that. Proud of several of those guys and how they've handled that situation. To me, this is a classic Dan Lanning answer. He is not going to come out right and say, yeah, we expect Dakorien Moore to play. He's going to say, hey, we don't know if he's going to be able to play, but he's doing a lot of these good things on the sidelines, helping out the guys, helping them go through what's ever happening in the film room, making sure, hey, I noticed this on the field. You can go take advantage of this corner this way. You can take advantage of that corner that way. You have to read through the lines with Dan Lanning, and sometimes you have to read verbal cues. At this point, from my understanding, I think that Dakorien Moore will be out on the field against JMU for no other fact other than he hasn't played in basically a month and a half by the time that game comes around. Remember, he's missed the last 4 games, and he still is a freshman, so there's a lot of room for him to grow. There's a lot of things that he needs to really mature to become the complete wide receiver that he can be. Also, this Oregon team, if they want any hope, any chance of going all the way to the college football national championship game, they are going to need him kicking on all cylinders. I do think he's going to be able to play, but I don't think anyone's going to know that he will play from Coach Lanning or anyone else in that Oregon program until probably kickoff when he's running out onto the field or that first offensive possession. I want you to let me know, though, down below in the comments, will Dakorien Moore play against JMU? Type Y for yes, type N for no. Whatever you do, make sure that you say it with your chest down in the comment section below. The next question that I have to ask and next injury update that I need to really dive into is Gary Bryant Jr. going to be able to return for the Ducks? Obviously, in that quote, Lanning is talking about Dakorien Moore, but you notice how he said, hey, several guys have been doing that. He's got to be talking about Gary Bryant Jr., helping out guys like Malik Benson, who've really flourished in their absence. Now, Gary Bryant Jr. is a speedster. The former USC Trojan transfer to Oregon is known for one thing and one thing only, and that is his ability to really open up a defense. Now, Gary Bryant Jr. is recovering from an ankle injury suffered against the Iowa Hawkeyes. It was very brutal kind of roll-up situation. I do think, though, that this is the perfect amount of time that he would need rest-wise to come back. Now, could Dan Lanning rest both Dakorien Moore and Gary Bryant until round 2? Yes, I think that he could. I do not think that he will necessarily. I think that Lanning is going to look at both Gary Bryant Jr. and I think he's going to look at Dakorien Moore and say, hey, you know what? We need to get them a couple of reps out on the field. We need to get them some good on good action, because just because you are out practicing with the team doesn't mean that you are 100% ready to go. Doesn't mean that you are ready for that game speed that you need to be ready for when you are playing a team like Texas Tech. And that, of course, is who the Oregon Ducks would be playing in that second round. If I'm Dan Lanning, I play both of them, even though I could wait until that Texas Tech game. Don't jinx it, though. I know I've already kind of jinxed it a little bit, alluded to the fact that I think Oregon is going to absolutely roll JMU, but help us out. If you want the Oregon Ducks, you love the Duckies, you want them to come home with the victory, you want them to have a playoff victory win in Autzen, make sure that you come on in and like this video. Don't jinx it. Don't be the person that doesn't like this video and then maybe some weird things happen on that Saturday night game. Come on in and like this video. The last thing that I want to dive into and talk about is Evan Stewart. He was supposed to come in this year as your wide receiver 1. Last year, he had a pretty good year as that number 2 guy, the Robin to the Batman that was Tez Johnson. But obviously in the summer, he had a bad knee injury, and there was speculation that his season was more than likely done unless you went for a long run on the college football playoff circuit. Now, Zach Gelb had an interview with Dan Lanning, and he ended up tweeting about this along with having that interview. Lanning leaves the door open for an Evan Stewart return before the college football playoff. I think it's huge because remember, I just went off about how Dan Lanning's not going to give you any injury updates for real. He's going to be very coy. He's going to be very shy. He's not going to own up to a lot of things. In that interview with Zach Gelb, he had a little smile and he said, yeah, we think we could get Evan Stewart back. Here's Evan Stewart's stats from last season. He had a nice little year. Remember, Tez Johnson really dominated the possessions. He got a lot more of the receptions. He got a lot more of the yards. But Evan Stewart was definitely a feast or famine type of a guy. He was a big play threat at any moment, and multiple times last year, he went off for big catches. If I am the Ducks, remember, last year, Dylan Gabriel's arm, not quite as strong as Dante Moore's arm. So what can Dante Moore do with an Evan Stewart? I think that the sky is the limit. And I also think that if Evan Stewart was able to come back, you'd have that true blue X factor. You hear a lot of experts talk about what this Oregon team can be, and a lot of experts are saying they are the dark horse to win the college football playoff. It is because they would get these 3 wide receivers back. And I know it's a long shot. When you have a knee injury where you tear your patella tendon, that thing hurts, and it can be very finicky on how long it takes for that wide receiver or player to come back from. But if Evan Stewart can come back at all, you know that he's going to want to play for the Oregon Ducks. You know that Dan Lanning is going to do anything in his power to get him back on the field for the Oregon Ducks, because Evan Stewart is the type of player that when you need them most can have that big 60-yard touchdown play at wide receiver. He is a big play threat waiting to happen, and you never say never with a guy like that. If he's able to give it a go, don't be shocked if the Oregon Ducks use him and you see him on the field against some other teams in this college football playoff. Now let me know. I've given you my opinion. I think that Evan Stewart will play in the college football playoff for the Ducks. Doesn't necessarily mean against JMU. Doesn't even necessarily mean against Texas Tech. But I think that he's going to give it a go. So I would give that answer a true. If you don't think that Evan Stewart's going to be out there on the field for the Ducks, let me know with a false and then explain your reasoning. It's MLA-cited formatting in the comment section. Don't just go in and say false. Let me know why you disagree. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I'm really appreciative of you all, and I'm excited to start the channel here on Chat Sports covering the Oregon Ducks. I grew up in Southwest Washington, big fan of the Seahawks, went to games for Oregon State. I know you guys hate them. Went to games for Wazoo. I grew up watching a lot of small college football. Linfield, went to PLU games, went to Lewis and Clark games. I went to a ton of local West Coast football, and I always rooted for the West Coast teams over the other teams. Now, in high school, obviously, I tried to play football. Unfortunately, the Oregon Ducks did not recruit me. I guess that was a Mario Cristobal type of deal there. Wasn't necessarily just my skill set. But I did go on and play offensive line at Central Washington University, a fine D2 program. So when I'm talking about some different stories in the trenches, I really do know what I'm talking about in there. And my first job out of college, I got to cover our Oregon Ducks over at Odyssey Portland, and I really enjoyed it. The last 3 years of getting up every single Saturday, watching the Ducks, breaking down what they were doing well, what they weren't doing well, man, it just meant so much to me that when I got hired here at Chat Sports, I was pushing the bosses. Hey, we need to start an Oregon Ducks football channel. We need to start an Oregon Ducks football channel. So I'm so excited to launch it here. This is our very first video. Make sure that you continue to subscribe to the channel and you come back as much as possible. Why? Because the minute that there's news for the Ducks, we are going to have content on them. We are always, and this is my guarantee to you, we are always going to cover the Ducks as the most informative channel that we can be and the most entertaining. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to this very first Oregon Football Report, and I can't wait to see you next time.